Way too far away from the building.
Okay, we're good right now.
Okay, if you want to scooch a little bit more this way. Hi everybody, good morning. We're here with Artemis, our little solid owl ambassador, and you'll get to see both of us today because our camera woman Kristen is back. Kristen is our senior fellow here, our senior education fellow at the Center for Wildlife, and today's her first day back, so we're so excited to see Miss Kristen today and Miss Artemis. Good morning. Hi. I know. Artemis is a representative of the smallest little species of owl that we have here in Maine. They are about the weight of a lemon. They're very, very tiny. They're not the smallest owls in the world though, and we can talk a little bit more about them. But when you guys get into this live, just give us a shout out and we'll say hello. And Kristen, you can feel free to say hi to everybody if you want.
Good morning, Katie and Naomi.
Good morning. Hi. So yes, Artemis is one of several owl species that we have here at the center. She is our tiniest little owl representative. What are you doing? She says, I can't really see what's going on. So Artemis is a senior ambassador here. She is most likely around 6 going on 7 years old, and came to us as a full-grown adult. So we're actually not completely positive on her age, but that's what we suspect. And she in the wild would usually not live past around 5 or 6 years. So she is up there for her species. She originally was brought to the center because of a wing injury that happened when she was in a car collision. This is something that happens to a lot of our raptors. A lot of our patients here at the center are brought to us with wing injuries, especially little hunters like this lady who who love to hunt near the roads. They usually will see that as an easy source of prey. I apologize for the catbird that's making an absolute ruckus behind us. He's freaked out about this tiny little predator.
Good morning, Luke and Melissa.
Good morning, everybody.
From Franklin, Mass. Good morning, Nevitt from Nashua. Good morning, Sue and Levi.
Good morning,
Good morning,
everyone.
Carol. Good morning, Kristen. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, everybody. And as always, these videos do have a donate button on them. So if you've been getting value out of watching these videos and you've enjoyed them, please consider donating. We really appreciate it. It goes directly back to the care of these little ambassadors. Helps to pay for your mice, little miss. So Artemis was originally brought to us with a wing injury after being hit by a car. And what's amazing is that she was actually brought to Tufts Wildlife Clinic down in Grafton, Massachusetts, with a broken humerus, which is the long bone in our upper arm that that birds have as well as humans. And that little bone on a tiny little owl this size is usually about the length and width of a toothpick. It's really, really tiny. It is also hollow. It's incredibly fragile. And the folks down at Tufts were actually able to pin that bone so that little miss would be able to keep her wing. If they hadn't been able to do that, she would have had to either have an amputation or would have been euthanized. So we're very, very lucky that they were able to somehow undertake that tiny microscopic surgery of inserting a little tiny pin into her humerus and holding her wing in place while it healed. So she was brought to us after that injury had healed. She lost some feathers because of her injuries and can no longer fly, but she is able to get around a little bit and was able to keep that wing. So we're very grateful to them.
Good morning, Allison from Haverhill. Good morning, Arlene and
Allison.
Sean. Good morning, Deborah and Zoe.
Hello.
She is very beautiful.
You are so pretty. Allison, I'm also from Haverhill. That's where I live, so I get to commute up to work every day. And we are very lucky to be here in southern Maine, where it's really beautiful and a beautiful nursery for lots of songbirds right now. We have lots of wildlife that are having babies and making our springtime so beautiful. It's amazing to look outside this in this time and see nature continuing on. So Miss Artemis was with us for probably about 3 years when we started noticing that she seemed to be unable to see. And this happens sometimes with older animals. They sometimes will lose vision, just like with people. And she has since, we think, lost most of her vision. So she is no longer able to see very well. And this could be due to old age. It could be due to, you know, something that happened where she, you know, bonked her head or something like that. But she can no longer see very well. So she is retired now. She doesn't usually go on programming to schools or off-site, so it's actually pretty cool that you guys get to see her up close, because most people don't get to. They might see her when they come visit the center, but she is usually off display and retired. She lives in this little kind of mesh that we made for her to keep her safe. She can't really see very well in her enclosure, so we didn't want her hurting herself, so we kind of made her a little it's like a mesh frame box thing that she can go into and be safe, and it's large enough that like we can get into it. It's not small, but she does very well in there. We've had no issues with her hurting herself, so we're very happy that seems to be content now.
Nevitz wants to know if there's a story behind her name, Artemis.
So we are just big goddess fans here at the center. We have a lot of goddess named ambassadors. We had Freya, our peregrine falcon. We have Gaia, our great horned owl. So we had that theme in mind when we were naming Miss Artemis, and we never had an Artemis, even though it's kind of a natural name for an owl. Artemis was the goddess of the hunt and associated with the nighttime. So we thought that would be fitting for Little Miss here. That was another reason that we liked the name, is we could shorten it to Miss or Little Miss, and that seemed appropriate and fitting. But it also, I think the cool thing about Artemis is Artemis was very strong and powerful and an excellent hunter, and even though these guys are pint-sized, super tiny little owls, they are still amazing hunters. Our little saw-whet owls like this can pick up and carry off mice that weigh like 2 to 3 times as much as they can. So they're very strong and powerful. They're small, but they're mighty, and if you look at these talons here, somebody needs their nails trimmed, but they have, you know, kind of big talons for a bird this size, and they're very strong. So when they are hopping down on a little mouse, they're able to grab that mouse and dispatch it really quickly with their beak and make sure that they get plenty of food. These guys are so tough that they're able to survive the winters in Maine. There are some that, like in Canada, that will migrate down to the southern half of the United States, but a lot of our little saw-whets here migrate just a little bit in elevation. They might move from the top of a mountain or close to the top of a mountain down to the seashore or something like that, but most of them do stay in Maine or in this area. And the way that they're able to do that is by caching food, just like a squirrel, which is an odd thing to think of an owl doing, but what they'll do is they'll catch a bunch of mice when it's nice out. When it's warmer, they'll catch a bunch of mice and then they'll stash them in a tree, in a little cavity in a tree, and what they'll do is they'll let that freeze, and because it's winter, they won't necessarily rot or go bad, so they'll let that leftover food freeze up in a little cavity in a tree, and then when they get hungry or when it's really nasty out, it's blizzarding, it's too cold to hunt, they don't want to expend body heat doing that, what they'll do is they'll just go get that little frozen mouse out of the freezer and pick it up in one of those talons and tuck it up close to their body and use their body heat to thaw it out, and then they'll have an extra meal. So they actually are really smart. Not a lot of owls have figured that out. Not a lot of species have figured out that they can cache food for later. So she is able to make it up here in the harsh Maine winters because of her ingenuity, and so that's just really cool. I think these guys are amazing animals. They also break a lot of the rules that are associated with owls. So when we think of owls, we think of mating for life, coming back to a nest every season, having babies with the same mate year after year, being really careful and attentive parents, staying with their babies for long periods of time. That's what we talk about when we talk about our great horned owls or our barred owls. Is, you know, they mate for life, they return to the same area, and they raise their babies all summer long. These guys are very different. They are polygamous, so usually one male will be taking care of like 2 to 3 nests of babies at a time. They're migratory, so they've done banding studies with saw-whets that find them in different states year after year. So one year they're in Vermont, the next they're in New Hampshire, the next they're in Maine. They don't seem to be very, they don't seem to care too much about where they're going as long as there's food there. So they are nomadic, and that's really odd. That's really different for an owl. So not territorial. They will occupy a territory when they're nesting for the spring, and then when they're hunting year round. But for the most part, they're very nomadic, and that's really different.
She is very pretty,
She's
Jacqueline
so pretty.
and Naomi. And owls seem to be, you know, favorite ambassadors for a lot of our
Definitely.
friends, Christopher.
Definitely. We have 5 different species of owls, and they're all so beautiful and all so unique in the way that they hunt and the way that they survive. They're so cool.
Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning, Ryan.
Very cute, Joanne.
Hi,
Thank
good
you so much for
morning.
donating, Kara.
Thank you so much, everybody. We really appreciate it.
Good morning, Julia. Do you know if we could use any more dandelions? Julia wants to know.
So we're always happy to take dandelions. I know everyone's been pulling them up recently. We do have a lot at the moment, but I would expect that'll be gone in the next week or so. So if you are, you know, either pulling them now and want to save them in the fridge for a little bit, we are not able to take a lot of donations, like in-kind donations. But with dandelions, we're having folks just leave them in a little paper bag out on our front porch, and we can pick them up and use them. So that's what I did last weekend, is I pulled dandelions and brought them all into work. So yeah, we do have some bunnies that could use it, but I would say probably in about a week or so we'll need more.
Good morning, Esther. She is very cute, Laura.
So sweet and
Morning,
tiny.
Ashley and Eileen.
For reference, guys, this is like my hand. I know sometimes when you're just looking at the ambassador, it can be tricky to judge size, but this is my hand next to Miss Artemis. She's tinier than that. Hi.
Good morning, Liz. I'm guessing that might be a relative, Liz Broder.
Maybe. Are we related? The whole family. I know Katie Levings is my cousin on here. Yeah, it's been really fun. The whole Broder Green clan has been watching. It's fun.
And thank you, Liz. We do love what we do.
Good
We love our friends, our ambassadors, and our patients, and taking care of them. So thank you.
Yeah, and Kristen was telling me she was going stir crazy at home, and this is her first day back at the center, and it's an amazing place to come to work every day. And even when there's not a pandemic going on, it's still amazing. But right now, it's so wonderful to be outside and in nature and with these guys who just keep your spirits up. So it's really great.
Good morning, Sue from Connecticut. Michelle wants to know how old she is.
She's probably around 6 or 7 years old, probably going on 7 at this point. But because she was brought into Tufts originally as an adult bird, we actually don't know for sure. So she could have been out in the wild for 1-2 years before coming in. So usually we only can tell the exact age of an animal when they come in as like a juvenile or a baby. But most birds in the wild are fairly young. There isn't, there's a lot of, there aren't a lot of birds that make it past that first year or second year. So when we get a bird in, there's some ways that we can tell, but if we have a bird that's struggling to find food or is hunting near a road and kind of using that opportunistic feeding area, we usually will guess that they're around a first year bird because they're less experienced. They might be going there to find food. So we guessed that she was about a year when she was originally brought to Tufts, and then she spent about another year or 2 with them healing up, and then we've had her for 3 going on 4 years now. So she's somewhere around 6, maybe more likely 7 years old.
Katie Loving said good morning.
Good
She said
morning.
Eli heard her name and pointed at her and said, "That's my mom."
Yeah, Eli. Good morning, Eli. We miss you guys. So yeah, we love being able to connect with everybody in our community, but I especially have been loving connecting with family that I don't ever get to see. I mean, I don't think Eli even remembers when I met him. So it's been so cool.
Good morning, Carolyn. Good morning, Sue and Michelle. She is very pretty.
Good morning. Hello. You are so gorgeous. One really cool thing about saw-whet owls is that with a lot of owls, we talk about how amazing their hearing is. And these guys are no exception. They have amazing, amazing hearing. But what's really cool is that a lot of owls will have slightly off-centered ears. They will have ears that are maybe a little bit lopsided, and it won't be super drastic, but in these guys it is crazy drastic. So one ear is usually like up here. I wonder if she'll let me. She's like, no. So one ear is usually like up in this area. She's like, what on earth are you doing? Sorry, Artemis. So she has an ear up here, and then she also has an ear down here, and it's really crazy lopsided. So if you ever see a skull of a saw-whet owl, it's like this, slanted. And we have been trying for years to get a good saw-whet owl skull, and they're just so fragile that when we do have a saw-whet that comes in, unfortunately it passes away, and very often the skull is either too delicate or is fractured in some way. So we have a hard time, but they're very, very cool to look at, just because the ears are so drastically lopsided. There's one down here and then one up here. And you can really tell that she can't see my fingers when I'm doing that, because she has no idea that I'm waving my hand in front of her face, which is not something I would do with a normal ambassador, because they would definitely give me a nip. But she can hear very well, so she has been able to still get around her enclosure, and in fact she can tell where my voice is coming from. She can tell when she hears like the rubbing of my fingers together. She can hear that. So she can still kind of figure out where things are using her hearing, which is really cool. We've noticed we had a camera on her for a while to make sure she was getting around in her enclosure okay, and we noticed her bobbing her head a lot, trying to like almost echolocate her the items in her enclosure, trying to kind of figure out and orient herself using her hearing. It was really cool to kind of see her do that. So she's figured out where things are. We keep them in the same place, and she can feed herself, she can preen herself, she can perch and be happy. So
Good morning, Tilly and Elliot. Good morning, Chuck from Rhode Island. Sean, she is so beautiful.
you are so pretty.
Karen says her eyes seem so big in proportion to her body.
She is. So if you actually look, her head is like pretty much the same size as her body, and her eyes take up about 30% of the space in her skull. If we wanted to have eyes as big as Artemis is in comparison to our bodies, they would have to be the size of like navel oranges. They're huge. But her eyes are actually a lot different in shape than ours. They're not round like our eyes. They're actually tube shaped. And that is because they're chock full of the cells that detect light. And they're also so big that they kind of have extra support around the sides that makes them tube shaped. And because of their shape, they're actually not able to roll them around in their skull like we can. So she isn't able to turn her eyes, she turns her head instead. So this is why our owls are famous for being able to turn their head super far around, because they actually are unable to roll their eyes. So in order to get the same field of vision that we have, they have to turn their heads around.
She is very beautiful,
You're
Paulette.
so cute.
Chuck wants to know what the range of the saw-whet is.
The range. So they are a northern species, but they do migrate down to the southern half of the United States in the winter. So like Kristen used to work in Maryland and would see them migrating through a lot. So they do occur in, I would say, the eastern half of the United States, and then they'll migrate down through to the southeastern part in the winter. But for the majority of the year, they're breeding and living up in the northeast. And their Latin name is actually a reference to where they're kind of native. They are called Aegolius acaticus, which the Acadia is like the Acadian region. So they're really northern New England is their breeding area, and then some of the ones that live up in like very cold areas of Canada will migrate down.
And then Chuck also wants to know what they hunt for food.
They are primarily going to be eating small mammals, so mice, moles, voles, things like that. They're not known to be incredibly insectivorous, like eating a lot of bugs, but they might. And then they may go after the occasional like little amphibian or something like that if they need to, but they are not generally, they're mostly known to eat small mammals. And what's really cool about that is that those mammals, their bodies are a lot more dense than birds. They weigh a lot more, they have a lot denser and a lot more body weight, and these guys are able to still kill and catch a mouse that might weigh as much as she does, if not more, and lift it up into a tree and hide it and eat it. So they're very, very strong. They're strong little ladies.
Good morning, Michaela and Jessica.
Good morning. Hello. Hi, everybody. You're so cute.
So cute.
So we get a lot of stories from like hunters and things that will be sitting in their tree stands and get this sensation like they're being watched, and look around and they'll see a tiny little saw-whet owl just kind of staring at them. They're known to sit and just stare at something until it moves along. They'll freeze and try to blend in to their surroundings as much as they can. They have this dappling on them that you can see to help them kind of blend into the light coming in through the branches and the leaves. They are known to live kind of in the lower branches of trees because they are small. They can't necessarily live up at the top of a tree and make it all the way down to the ground to catch something in time. So they will live at kind of the lower limbs of a tree, and that means that they are going to try to blend in with the light kind of trickling in through the branches. And so they have all the beautiful spots all over them to make them look like that. And so what they do when they see a predator coming is they just freeze, try to rely on that camouflage. They stare down the thing that they keep an eye on the thing that's coming for them or that's coming through, and people get the sense that they're just kind of staring into their souls when they find them. There are a lot of Native American myths up here about them being really tough and like they used to be big and tough and strong, and then they got shrunk or something because they look like they're gonna try to fight you. They just stare you down, but they're really just trying to blend in and stay safe. Nice job. There's so many poops this morning.
You're welcome, Chuck.
Yeah. They have amazing folklore about these guys because they are one of the owl species we would get to see more. And in most cultures, owls are actually not very well liked. It's really only like Western civilization that seems to revere owls as like wise or knowledgeable or powerful. Most cultures do seem to think that owls are more of like a death knell than anything else. They are like harbingers of death in a lot of cultures. So we are fascinated with owls in our culture, but Native Americans cultures, so there are a lot of myths about owls being bad omens, and in Iranian culture as well, and in some Eastern cultures, they're not necessarily as well loved. We are fascinated with them, I think, because they're mysterious and nocturnal, and they have all these amazing adaptations, and they're so cute. There is something to be said for cuteness just being the main reason we like something. They are very cute, but they're not as sweet and cuddly as people think. If anyone's ever, interacted with an owl outside, they're usually pretty grouchy, don't necessarily want to be near us. They'll clack their beaks, they'll hiss, they'll fly off. And in captivity, these guys are really cat-like. So we experience a lot of them not wanting to interact with us unless it's on their terms. A lot of nips, a lot of hissing and clacking of the beak. They're usually not super keen on humans. They're very cat-like.
Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning. And they are cute and they look very sweet. And that has led to, some countries legalizing them as a pet. So if you do see owls being kept in people's homes on the internet, that's usually one of those countries. So like in the UK, that's legal to have these guys as pets, but in the United States it is not, and we do not recommend trying it because they're wild animals. They really need to be out in the wild, living their best wild life.
Little talons.
Oh my God, yeah, those hurt.
Yeah.
So the little talons are almost worse than the big talons when you get crunched by them, because they're very small and can go right through your skin. So they definitely are not good. Yeah, see the nipping? That was a nip. Yeah, I know. You're so angry. We're almost done.
The eyes are pretty cool, Bonnie.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, she definitely does have a little personality for sure. Good morning, Bill from Florida.
Good
wow.
morning.
And good morning, Jocelyn.
Good morning,
we love
everybody.
owls too.
Something you might notice is she is actually kind of dilating and what's the opposite of dilating? Constricting her pupils over and over again. She is actually able to control that, so she can keep her eyes dilated if she's on high alert, and then when the sun shines in her eye or if she relaxes, they'll constrict down. And it makes it kind of tricky because when we're looking at their eyes in an exam, often they'll just hold them open, dilated, and you're like, well, we think she has good pupil response, but we can't tell for sure because she's holding them open. So you might notice that.
And Chuck just wants to know why she came to us.
She was originally hit by a car and sustained a fracture to her humerus, which is the long bone in the upper part of our arm and in their wing. And that was pinned originally by Tufts Wildlife Center in Grafton, Mass. And she was able to keep her wing, but she's not able to really fly very well or get around at all. And then now she is a senior bird and much, much older, and is also mostly lacking vision, so she can't really see very well at all. She's probably almost completely blind at this point. And so she is originally not able to be released because of a wing injury that prevents her from being able to fly, but now she also is an old lady and can't see very well. But she's very sweet, and she does seem to enjoy sitting in the sun and getting her walks, so we're happy that she has a good retirement life. Yeah. Nice job. If anyone else has any more questions, please let us know. We're happy to answer any questions for you about Artemis, about our work. Thank you as always for the donations. We really, really appreciate them. They go a long way here at the Center for Wildlife to help support these guys and keep them well fed and well cared for. I know, where are you going? Yeah.
I'm ready to go back to bed.
You're ready to go back to your house. So she is, of course, nocturnal, and this is when she would normally be sleeping and enjoying the sun, and she's ready to go back. But thank you guys so much. If we have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them, but we're gonna head back to our enclosure. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you again tomorrow with a very special friend, a big fan favorite tomorrow. Bye, guys.
Bye.